Welcome to another episode of Extreme Expat Stories of Thailand. Hello. I ran from 80,000 euros in debt and from lies that were catching up faster than I could. So I bought a one-way ticket to Thailand to disappear. Months later, I woke up in a hospital with no memory of how I got there. Only whispers that I'd slipped, been pushed, or somehow survived by accident. This is the story of what really happened next. I opened my eyes to the smell of disinfectant and the sound of waves that I couldn't remember hearing. Above me, a fluorescent tube flickering. Beside me, a Buddha statue on a metal shelf, smiling that ageless smile. My left arm was in a cast, my ribs wrapped tight. And when I tried to speak, my throat felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. A nurse leaned over me, her face soft with relief, and said something in Thai I didn't understand. Then she switched to English. "You're lucky. Very lucky." I wasn't sure what luck had to do with it. The last thing I remember was standing on the rooftop in Patong, the air thick with frangipani and gasoline, the neon glow of the beach road below me like a fever dream. After that, nothing. A black hole where memory should be. They told me later I'd fallen 3 stories into a patch of scrubland behind a hotel. A gardener found me at dawn, curled under a bougainvillea bush, still breathing, somehow. But to tell you how I ended up on that rooftop, I need to go back, way back, to Amsterdam, to a life I can barely recognize now. My name is Luca. I'm Dutch. 38 years old. And before Thailand, I was an accountant in a mid-sized firm near Central Station. I had an apartment with a view of the canal, a wardrobe of tasteful suits, an espresso machine I'd spent too much on. On the surface, everything looked right. I went to work, came home, had drinks with colleagues on Friday nights at the brown cafes along Prinsengrat. Marieke and I had been together for 3 years. She was a primary school teacher with kind eyes and a laugh that could fill a room. She talked about marriage, children, a house outside the city with a garden, normal things, good things. But underneath, I was drowning. It started small, the way these things always do. A few hundred euros on a cryptocurrency tip I'd read about on Reddit. When that paid off, I put in more. Then more. I told myself I was being smart, diversifying, planning for a future. But really, I was chasing a feeling. That electric rush when a number goes up. When you feel like you've cracked some secret code that everyone else missed. I'd check my phone during meetings, in the bathroom, lying in bed next to Marieke while she slept. The crypto forums became my second life. Full of strangers with usernames like Moon Lambo and Diamond Hands. All of us convinced we were early to something revolutionary. Then the market turned. Not gradually, violently. One morning I woke up and half of my portfolio was gone. I panicked and bought more, trying to average down. A strategy I'd read about in some anonymous forum post. I took out a personal loan, then another. I borrowed from friends, spinning stories about a business opportunity, a sure thing. I even dipped into money Marieke and I had been saving for a deposit on that house with the garden. By the time I admitted I had a problem, I was 80,000 euros in debt, some of it to banks, some to friends who were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. And some to a guy named Dmitry who I'd met through the forums, a Russian expat who offered loans with no paperwork and interest rates that should have been my first warning. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I'd sit in my office pretending to work on spreadsheets while mentally calculating how many years it would take to dig myself out. The answer was always the same. Too many. I started having panic attacks on the tram. I'd lie to Marieke about why I was so distant, so distracted. Just work stress, I'd say. Big client, lots of pressure. She believed me because she wanted to. We all believe what we need to. One night in early April, Dimitri sent me a text. Just 3 words. We need talk. I knew what that meant. I'd missed 2 payments. I sat at my desk that night, alone in the apartment. Marieke was visiting her parents and looked at my options. There weren't many. Bankruptcy would ruin me professionally. Confessing to Marieke would destroy us. Facing Dimitri seemed even worse. So I did what cowards do. I ran. I bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok with the last of my credit, packed a single backpack, and left a note on the kitchen table that said nothing useful, just, "I'm sorry, I can't explain. Don't look for me." I told myself I'd send money once I figured it out. I told myself a lot of things. Thailand felt like the obvious choice. Cheap, far, easy to disappear into. I'd read the forums, the expat threads full of men like me, broken in different ways, all looking for the same thing. A place where no one asks questions, where you can reinvent yourself, or at least forget who you were. I landed in Bangkok in late April, the hottest month, and stepped out of Suvarnabhumi into air so thick it felt like a breathing soup. The taxi driver spoke no English beyond "where you go," and I pointed to an address I'd scribbled on a piece of paper. Khao San Road. He nodded, lit a cigarette, and we merged into traffic that moved like a living organism. All honks and heat and gasoline fumes. I checked into a guest house that smelled like mildew and incense. The woman at the desk, an older Thai lady with a gold tooth, took my passport without looking at me. 300 baht per night. Pay in advance. My room was on the 4th floor. No elevator. A narrow box with a hard mattress. A ceiling fan that wobbled like it might fall. And a window that looked out into an alley where stray cats fought over garbage. That first night I sat on the roof terrace with a bottle of Leo, watching the tuk-tuks weave through traffic, listening to Bob Marley drift up from the bars below. A group of backpackers, Australian, maybe 20 years old, were playing drinking games and laughing like they'd discovered something new about happiness. I envied them. They were lost too, but in a different way, a temporary way. I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe I can just vanish. For a while, it worked. I drifted. Bangkok was a beautiful mess. Temples next to 7-Elevens. Monks in orange robes swiping smartphones. The constant hum of motorbikes and street vendors shouting over each other. I spent my days walking until my feet ached, eating pat krapao at roadside stalls, drinking too much in backpacker bars where everyone told the same lies about why they were there. Gap year, finding myself, taking a break from the corporate grind. No one ever said, "I'm running from debt, I'm hiding from my life, I'm afraid of who I've become." At night I'd lie in my narrow bed, the fan rattling overhead, and try not to think about Marieke or the people I owed money to. Sometimes I check her Facebook, just to see if she's posted anything. For the first week, there was nothing. Then one day, a simple status. Sometimes the people we love the most disappear without explanation, learning to live with questions that have no answers. It had 47 likes. I closed the app and didn't open it again. After a month, I moved north to Chiang Mai. The air was cooler there, the pace slower. The city felt gentler somehow, less frantic. I found work teaching English at a language school, under the table, no questions asked. The owner, a Thai woman named Porn, looked at my resume for about 30 seconds before hiring me. "You speak English?" she asked. I nodded. "You have patience?" I lied and said yes. "Okay, you start Monday." The pay was garbage, but it covered rent and noodles. I moved into a studio apartment near the university, a concrete box with a tiny balcony where I'd smoke cigarettes and watch the sun set over Doi Suthep. My students were sweet, Earnest kids who wanted to learn American slang so they could watch Netflix without subtitles. I taught them phrases I barely believed in anymore. Follow your dreams. Never give up. Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the classroom window and think, who the hell are you? This person standing here with a whiteboard marker, pretending to have his life together, pretending to have wisdom worth sharing. It was performance. It was survival. I was good at both. It was in Chiang Mai that I met Nikolai. We crossed paths at a bar called The Lost Farang, a dingy place near the night bazaar where expats went to feel less alone. It was all dark wood and Bob Dylan on the speakers, the kind of place that could have been in Bangkok or Saigon or Manila. Geography didn't matter. Nikolai was Swedish, tall and blonde, with the kind of face that looked boyish until you noticed his eyes. They were older than the rest of him, harder. He was drinking alone, same as me. And when I sat down, he nodded like we were old friends. We started talking, small stuff at first, where we came from, how long we'd been in Thailand, opinions on the best cow soy in the city. He'd been here 8 months, he said. Before that, Vietnam. Before that, Cambodia. Always moving, never settling. I asked if he missed home. He laughed, bitter and short. Home is a place that doesn't want me anymore. As the night went on and the whiskey loosened us up, the conversation turned heavier. I can't go back, he said at one point, staring into his glass. Not ever. I didn't ask why. You don't. In those circles, but he told me anyway. Back in Sweden, he'd been involved in something serious. An arson, a building that burned, people who got hurt. The details were vague and I didn't press. What mattered was that he was wanted. Interpol had issued a red notice. To stay free, he'd bought forged documents, a German passport, a driver's license, even a fake work visa that said he was an English teacher in Hanoi. He'd been moving around Southeast Asia for 2 years, staying just ahead of the net. In here, he said, pulling out his wallet and showing me the fake German ID with a photo that looked almost like him. Everyone can be anyone. That's the beauty of it. You think half the guys you meet are who they say they are? We're all ghosts, brother. I nodded. I understood. We both did. Over the next few months, Nikolai and I became close. Not friends exactly, more like accomplices in the art of disappearing. We took trips together, bus rides up to Pai, where we rented motorbikes and drove through mountain fog so thick you couldn't see 10 meters ahead. A week in Laos to reset his visa, staying in a guest house by the Mekong where we drank beer lao and watched the sun turn the water gold. Long nights in karaoke bars where we sang badly and laughed at nothing, our voices hoarse with drink and something like joy. He taught me things, how to spot undercover cops. They always wear polo shirts, he said, and they never haggle. How to bribe your way out of minor trouble. Slip the officer a few hundred baht folded small. Hand it over like you're shaking hands. How to live light and keep moving. Never rent a place for more than 3 months. Never make friends you can't leave. Never tell anyone your real story. I taught him how to make Dutch pancakes with whatever we could find at the market. Rice flour instead of wheat, palm sugar instead of white. We cooked them on his tiny electric burner, eat them with Nutella, and laugh about how terrible they were. It was stupid and reckless, and the happiest I'd been in years. We never talked about why I'd run. He never asked, and I never offered. In our world, the past was a locked room you didn't open unless you wanted to bleed. But nothing lasts. One afternoon in late November, Nikolai texted me from Pattaya. He'd gone down there for a few days, chasing a lead on cheap lodging and maybe some under-the-table work at a bar. The message was short. Got pulled over. Might be trouble. Then nothing. I tried calling. straight to voicemail. I checked the Expat forums, the local news sites, my heart climbing into my throat with every refresh. 2 days later, I found it. A small article in the Pattaya Mail about a Swedish fugitive arrested during a routine traffic stop, caught using fake German papers. No photo, no name. But I knew. I just knew. I packed my bag that night and left Chiang Mai without telling anyone. If they'd gotten Nikolai, I could be next. I didn't know if my name was on any list, if Dmitri had connections that reached this far, if the Dutch police cared enough about a debtor to track me across continents. But I wasn't going to wait around to find out. I headed south, toward the islands, thinking I'd lose myself in the tourist chaos of Phuket and Koh Samui. I had maybe 20,000 baht left, enough for a few weeks if I was careful. I wasn't thinking about redemption or going home. I was just running, the way I'd always run. The islands were everything and nothing. Koh Samui was crowded with honeymooners and gap year kids taking mushroom shakes and posting sunsets to Instagram. I found work washing dishes at a beach resort, sleeping in a storage room behind the kitchen that smelled like grease and bleach. It was mindless, exhausting, exactly what I needed. I'd work from noon until midnight, scraping plates and scalding my hands under too hot water, then collapse onto my mattress too tired to dream. But the nights were hard. I'd lie awake listening to the ocean, thinking about Nikolai in some Bangkok detention cell, thinking about Marieke, thinking about the man I used to be, the man with the canal view apartment and the Nespresso machine, who worried about quarterly reports and whether his suit fit right. That man felt like a stranger now. Or maybe I was the stranger and he was the real one. I couldn't tell anymore. I started drinking more. I stole small things, a lighter from a bar, a pair of sunglasses from a tourist bag left unattended on the beach. Nothing big, just enough to feel something. Guilt, maybe, or power. The small thrill of taking what wasn't mine, of crossing yet another line I'd said I'd never cross. I'm not sure which. One night I met a group of backpackers at a beach bonfire. They were young and sunburned and spoke in that easy way people do when they haven't yet learned that the world can break you. They were planning a boat trip to the Sudin Islands, a remote archipelago up near the Burmese border. Crystal clear water, they said, untouched reefs, turtles and manta rays and fish that looked like they'd been painted by someone high on color. A guy named Tom, an Australian with sun-bleached hair and a neck tattoo of coordinates, said he knew a fisherman who'd take us cheap, 1,500 baht each, maybe less if we bargained. I had no reason to go, but had no reason not to, so I went. We left at dawn, me, Tom, 2 German girls who spoke to each other in rapid whispers, and the fisherman, an older Thai man with leathery skin and a smile full of gaps. His name was something I couldn't pronounce and didn't remember. The boat was small, wooden, the kind that looked like it had been patched together 100 times with whatever was lying around. We motored out into the Andaman, the water shifting from green to blue to indigo as the sun climbed higher. For a few hours it was perfect. Sun on my face, salt in my lungs, the weight of the world somehow far behind us. Then the engine coughed and died. The fisherman swore in Thai, yanked at the starter cord. Nothing, just a hollow clicking sound. The Germans started asking nervous questions in broken English. Was this normal? Would we be okay? How far were we from land? Tom tried to help, pulling at wires and checking the fuel line, but none of us knew what we were doing. The waves picked up, the boat rocked, harder and harder, and suddenly we were taking on water through a crack I hadn't noticed before. I remember the fisherman shouting, gesturing toward life jackets stored in a plastic crate. I remember Tom throwing one to each of us, I remember the panic rising in my chest, tasting copper and sand, salt. And then a wave hit us broadside, and I was in the ocean, gasping, choking, the boat already 10 meters away and sinking fast. Someone was screaming. Maybe it was me. I don't remember much after that. The cold, the burn of salt in my throat, the sun hammering down like a physical weight. I tried to swim towards something, land, debris, anything. But the current was stronger than me. My arms turned to lead, my legs cramped. At some point I stopped fighting. I just floated, face up, watching the sky turn from blue to gold to black. I thought about Marieke. I thought about Nikolai. I thought about my father, dead 10 years now. And I wonder if I'd see him soon. Mostly I thought about nothing, just the water, the sky, the way everything hurt and then didn't. When I woke up, I was on a beach, my face pressed onto wet sand. Two fishermen stood over me, talking in rapid Thai. One of them poured water over my face. The other wrapped a sarong around my shoulders. I was shaking so hard I thought my bones would break. They carried me to their boat, a bigger one than Tom's, more solid, more real, and took me to a clinic on the mainland. I spent 3 days there, sunburned, dehydrated, hallucinating half the time. I saw Marieke standing in the corner. I saw my apartment in Amsterdam flooding with seawater. I saw Nikolai laughing, free, somewhere I couldn't reach. When I was stable enough, they transferred me to a hospital in Phuket. That's where the story should end, but it doesn't. I was discharged a week later, my skin still peeling, my savings almost gone. I found a cheap guest house in Patong, a grimy place off Soi Bangla where the walls were thin and you could hear everything. Fights, laughters, the bass from nearby clubs vibrating through the floors. I told myself I'd rest for a few days, then figure out what came next. But the truth was, I had no next, no plan, no money, no way forward. I was stuck, and the walls were closing in. I started seeing things that weren't there. Shadows in doorways, police uniforms in crowds that vanished when I looked directly at them. I convinced myself that someone was following me, that Nikolai had given them my name, that any minute they'd kick down my door. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I'd pace the guest house at 3 a.m, my mind spinning in tighter and tighter circles, convincing myself of conspiracies that made no sense. The paranoia wasn't rational, but paranoia never is. One night, around midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I left the guest house and started walking. Patong was loud and bright, full of drunk tourists and touts and girls in high heels calling out prices. I pushed through the crowds, climbed a side street, kept going until I found myself at the back of a tall building, maybe a hotel, maybe an apartment block, I don't know. There was a metal staircase on the outside, the kind you see in old buildings, fire escape or service access. I started climbing. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wanted to see the city from above. Maybe I wanted to feel something other than fear. Maybe I wanted to jump. I climbed 3 flights, 4, until I was on the roof. The air was warm and thick, the smell of frangipani mixed with exhaust fumes. Below me, Patong glowed like a circuit board, neon signs, headlights, the black curve of the beach. I walked to the edge. I looked down, and then I was falling. I don't remember the fall itself. No slow motion, no light flashing before my eyes. Just a blank space where the memory should be. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in that hospital bed. The Buddha statue smiling at me. The nurse saying I was lucky. They told me I'd been in a coma for 11 days. Multiple fractures in my left arm and leg. 3 broken ribs. A concussion. Internal bleeding they'd managed to stop just in time. They found a passport in my jacket pocket. My real one, not a fake. But I had no other ID. No emergency contact. No one to call. For almost 2 weeks, I was just another anonymous farang who'd fallen from a building. It happens more often than you'd think. In those early days, when I was still too weak to move, a Buddhist monk came to visit. The hospital invited him, part of their outreach program. He sat beside my bed, said a few blessings in Pali, then switched to broken English. He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a presence that felt calm in a way I'd forgotten existed. "You survive for a reason," he said, "not accident. You have work to do." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was nobody, that I'd survived my dumb luck and nothing more. But I couldn't speak. My throat was too raw, my voice too small, so I just listened. Over the next month, as my bones started to heal, I had a lot of time to think about Nikolai, rotting in some detention center, his fake German papers confiscated, his real name finally catching up with him, about Marieke, who probably thought I was dead, or worse, who'd stopped thinking about me at all, about the fisherman who'd pulled me out of the ocean, who'd saved my life for no reason other than it was the right thing to do, about the gardener who'd found me under the bougainvillea and called for help instead of walking away, about the nurses who kept me alive, who'd changed my bandages and checked my vitals and smiled at me even though I was just another broken foreigner who'd made stupid choices, about all the small, unremarkable kindnesses I'd been given in this country, even as I'd spent my time running and stealing and lying to myself. When I was finally able to walk, slowly, with a cane, the hospital discharged me into the care of a temple hospice that took in foreigners with nowhere else to go. It was a quiet place on the edge of town, surrounded by coconut palms and bougainvillea. I stayed there for 6 weeks, sleeping on a thin mattress in a wooden hut, waking at dawn to the sound of chanting. The monks never asked questions. They just gave me tasks. I swept leaves. I polished Buddha images until they gleamed. I helped prepare meals, chopping vegetables, stirring enormous pots of curry. I ate rice and vegetables with the monks, listening to their stories, their laughter, the easy way they moved through the world. I didn't speak much. I just worked. One afternoon, one of the younger monks asked me why I'd come to Thailand. His name was Pong, and he spoke excellent English from years studying at a temple in California. We were sitting on the temple steps, watching the light fade. I told him the truth. I was running. He nodded, unsurprised. "Everyone run," he said, "but cannot run from self. Self always come." I laughed. It hurt my ribs, but I laughed anyway. He was right, of course. You can cross oceans, change names, burn your passport, and still wake up as yourself, still carry the same weight, still owe the same debt, even if they're half a world away. Before I left the temple, I wrote a letter to the fisherman who'd saved me. I didn't have an address, but I gave it to Pong, who said he'd make sure it reached them through the local fishing community. I thanked them. I told them they'd saved more than my life. They'd saved the possibility of something else. I'm not sure they ever got it, but I needed to write it anyway. I also donated blood for another patient at the hospital, a Burmese migrant worker who'd been in a motorcycle accident. The nurses said he had the same blood type as me, that the donation might save his life. It wasn't much, but it was something. A small act of repayment for all the times I'd taken and never given. In early February, I left Thailand. I flew to Kuala Lumpur and then on to Amsterdam, using my real passport, my real name. No disguises, no lies. I turned myself in to the creditors, worked out a payment plan that will take me years to clear. The interest alone is crushing, but I'm paying it month by month, slowly clawing my way back to zero. I sent Marieke an email apologizing for everything, for the lies, for the disappearance, for the cowardice. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't expect a reply. She sent one anyway, 3 weeks later, just 2 sentences. "I'm glad you're alive. I hope you find what you're looking for." That was it. No anger, no recrimination, just grace I didn't deserve. We haven't spoken since. I still don't know exactly what happened on that rooftop. Did I jump? Did I slip? Was I pushed by something inside me that wanted out? The doctor said it could have been vertigo, alcohol, a panic attack. They said the human mind protects itself by erasing trauma. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe I'll never know. All I can say is that I fell and I survived. And somewhere in the space between those two things, I found something I didn't know I was looking for. Thank you for reading this. I don't expect you to publish it, and I don't need a reply. I just needed to tell it. Luca, Dutch, 38.